Hey, Joe Mastriano, CPA, over 40 years and thousands of successful IRS tax cases. Today, I want to give the listeners some very valuable free audit advice. And so here goes. About maybe 12 years ago, I decided I'd put together the things that we do to prevent an audit. And so I have these four um, items on a list, and every time we use them for the current year's return, not one person I know of has been audited. Number one is we file an extension, never filed by April 15th. That's where the first big batch of audits come from. If you file a few days, that's number two, a few days before the end of the extension, then they've already selected over 90% of returns for audit. Chances are, unless your return is really messed up, you won't be selected for audit. Number three, we match it to the wage and income transcript. I can't believe how many companies, I don't care if they're CPA firms, law firms, companies, your banker, family attorney told you to go to, and they have the best reputation in town. Chances are they probably outsource it to India or some other country anyway, or they hire juniors who were only in the country for half a year or a year, don't understand our system or anything. And the IRS has a wage and income transcript. It's a list of third-party payer documents, W-2s, 1099s, K-1s. You want to know what the IRS has on you before you file the return, and you want to match those items on the return. You don't want to fail the matching program. And obviously, if there's an item that's incorrect, you want to correct it right then and there on the return and give them the evidence. So if your return is selected, they can throw it back and say, oh, well, this is the correction, and now I know what it is. Don't leave them guessing, as a lot of people do when they take a W-2 that maybe has 100,000 of income on it, and they do a self-employed Schedule C business, a home business that somebody told them they can write off all these items, and they have a $50,000 loss, cutting that income in half. Those are audits waiting to happen. The fourth item is we do paper returns. They're getting more sophisticated. This may change next year where they won't allow it anymore. That'll be interesting. But what happens is there's no room when you e-file for extended explanations. Some people have situations, in fact, many people have situations that don't follow the norm, and they have discriminant income function tests, and you'll fail those tests if you have excess contributions or any other items, such as a big loss on a Schedule C that might be legitimate. And if you don't explain that the taxpayer understands the rules and has the evidence and things like that to discourage them, they'll wonder if you know what's going on, and they'll audit you. So you want to put explanations on the return. Sometimes you can fit them on the back of a Schedule C, but many times you can't. And if you send in the returns, a lot of firms are stuck using e-filing, because if they file returns for clients and they file more than 10 returns, they have to e-file every return. We just make sure we don't file more than 10 returns, so therefore we can do paper returns. Again, that might change in a year or two, but that's the best thing to do now. The other part of this video that I want to make available to everybody is your firm that's doing your tax return does not do you much justice if they don't explain to you what the IRS accepts for evidence. I mean, many people aren't even told that they need the proof of payment and the invoice explaining what was purchased in a manner that'll show it's needed for the job. My construction people usually don't have much problem when they go to Home Depot or some of these other companies that'll list how many hammers, nails, screws, sheetrock, things like that. However, if they do have any large projects, they'll want photographs taken to show that you didn't use those items to build an extension on your house, for example, or your parents' house. So now we go beyond the basic invoice and proof of payment, and that is each item on the return has a particular set of rules that these auditors will look for to show them that you understood the rules and that the expense is legitimate. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. Their preparers they're not sophisticated enough in the first place to understand these things. There's things such as investor status that gets you additional deductions. There's real estate professional. And you can look up the rules and it's going to say, 750 hours or whatever the various rules are. But the IRS will want to go beyond that. Because if you have a full-time job and you don't have the right evidence that they're looking for, they're going to deny it. You can't just simply state that you met the rules. So I'm hoping that the listeners of this video understand that that your returns require a level of sophistication that experienced accountants bring to the table when they do returns. And that I also want to add that the IRS is going after people like crazy now. They're disallowing deductions even when you have the evidence. So I'm going to conclude this with the fact that you've got to be crazy if you're going to assume that your tax preparer knows what they're doing to prevent an audit. You can go over the list of 4 things that I've given you, and you can just ask yourself, if you look at your tax return and you've got some decent sized deductions on there, do you understand what the IRS specifically requires in those particular areas? Now, I've left a lot out as far as, making sure that it makes sense that if you show your income is not enough income to support your household, your spouse and kids, or whoever else you're supporting, then they're going to raise a question in that manner as well. So there's a lot beyond just solving the alerts on a tax practice. And anybody who thinks that they can just do their own return tends to think that, well, they know how to use the tax practice and they know how to clear the alerts. But what they do is they find out the hard way when they're audited that they never understood how the IRS interprets those rules and what they expect from you as evidence. So I invite people to call Stephanie, my assistant for over 12 years, at 713-774-4467. Explain your situation. Robin here does returns. She's done them for decades for CPA firms. She's got a great financial statement knowledge as well. If you're not happy with your accounting firm because you're not getting the inside scoop on what's going on with your financial statements and tax returns, and you're just assuming that they know what they're doing, please don't do that. Listen to what we have to say. Educate yourself a little more, or you will become one of these victims that I don't even think a week goes by that we're not contacted, that they just got a bill for 50,000 or 100,000, and they hired an accounting firm and they have no idea what's going on. And I have to explain to them, similar to what I've put in this video, that they should have been told how this all works. And this goes for installment agreements if you owe money as well, and offers and compromises, because I frequently educate IRS employees on what they really should be telling taxpayers so that the agreements are binding and they don't break the agreement, because a lot of these automated collection people that'll set up agreements for you don't tell you because they're not told these things. That's it for now. Call Stephanie, 713-774-4467. And don't be a victim anymore of an accounting firm or law firm or tax preparation firm that's not sophisticated or responsible enough to explain to you how this works. I've been doing tax returns since I was 19, 68 now, in excellent health, and that's about 50 years. And I've learned a lot during that time and quit counting IRS cases after about 2,000 of them. And I have great contacts at the IRS who talk to me, who give me the time of day, who allow me to substantiate deductions. They don't always agree with me, and sometimes I've got to go to appeals, but at least I don't get kicked around and browbeaten because of my lack of knowledge and experience. Thank you. As soon as I could end this.